What is going on, guys? It's ThePowerBauer 2 here. Every Pokemon fan has argued with one of his or her friends about which generation of Pokemon is the best. Some love the graphics of the new games, while others prefer the nostalgia of the originals. Everyone has their own belief based on their opinions, but which generation is really the best? We are going to delve into this great debate by critically analyzing each generation in a non-biased and completely fair manner to determine which generation is actually the best. Today, we are going to be looking at the original games of Red and Blue for Generation 1. We will be grading each generation on a variety of categories. These categories include the Pokedex, the region, the story, the music, and any new mechanics that were added in that generation. Now, I did get the idea for this series from The King Nappy, who just did a series called The Great Generation Debate, and the title of this video comes from False Swipe Gaming, who does analyses of Pokemon's battling capabilities. If either of those interest you, please click on the links in the description to check out their channels, as I believe you will enjoy their content very much. Now, with all of that out of the way, let us find out the answer to the age-old question: how good was Generation 1 actually? Let us begin. Pokemon Red and Blue were released in 1996. Being the first Pokemon games to ever come out, Pokemon Red and Blue set the standard for Pokemon games for years to come. Containing 151 original Pokemon, Kanto to this day still houses the second most Pokemon for a generation, only behind Generation 5. Many people believe these 151 to be the greatest compilation of Pokemon of any generation, and that belief is definitely valid. The original three starters, Bulbasaur, Charmander, and Squirtle, are still viewed by many as the three best starters for a single region. Venusaur is a beastly dinosaur with a giant flower, Blastoise is a freaking turtle with cannons, and Charizard is a damn fire-breathing dragon. They are dope as hell, and you cannot deny that. Along with these starters, Pokemon Red and Blue contains many excellent Pokemon, such as Lapras, Gengar, Arcanine, Snorlax, Nidoking, Aerodactyl, Dragonite, and of course, Mewtwo. This is just a small sample size of the variety of great Pokemon that Game Freak created for these games. However, just like every other generation, Kanto 2 has its fair share of subpar Pokemon. Generation 1 had a tendency to simply make Pokemon multiply when they evolve. For example, Magnemite to Magneton, Diglett to Dugtrio, and Doduo to Dodrio. These are just a few examples. Now, before any Gen 1er starts sending hate comments my way, let me explain. I am not saying that these are bad Pokemon. In fact, I personally like all the Pokemon I just mentioned. However, when people try to say that later generations got lazy with their Pokemon, but praise Generation 1 for its innovation and excellent Pokedex, they are simply contradicting themselves, because every generation has its downsides, and yes, that includes Generation 1. Moving to Legendaries, Generation 1 has the fewest number of legendary Pokemon, at a measly 5. Although Kanto has the fewest legendaries, it does have a very solid cast of them. Mewtwo and Mew are to this day still favorites by fans. I mean, come on! I think the first Pokemon movie alone validates the greatness of these two legendaries. The legendary birds are phenomenal as well. My personal favorite is Zapdos, but I do believe Articuno to be amazing as well, with only one downside being Moltres, but I still do think it's very good. All in all, Generation 1 has a fantastic Pokedex, even if it does have a few lazy Pokemon. With the second largest Pokedex and a phenomenal cast of Pokemon, Generation 1 receives an A- for its Pokedex. On to the next topic. The Generation 1 games took place in the region of Kanto. Based on the Kanto region of real-life Japan, this region was the original, where many people were first exposed to the wide world of Pokemon. This region has some of the most iconic locations in all of the Pokemon universe: Viridian Forest, Mount Moon, Rock Tunnel, Seafoam Islands, Pokemon Tower, Pokemon Mansion, and Cerulean Cave are just some of the great locales that Kanto is home to. Along with these, Kanto has a variety of unique cities as well, including Pewter City, Fuchsia City, Saffron City, Lavender Town, and Cinnabar Island. Each city or area provides a unique and different experience than the area before it. People love these locations so much that some could even traverse through them with their eyes closed. There is no question that the majority of Pokemon fans can name almost every location from Kanto from just their memory, and that is very impressive. Plus, every city is named after a color, and I personally believe that's a really cool idea, especially when you realize that the starting town is called Pallet Town. They really thought it through. Although Kanto houses some of the most memorable and iconic locations in all of Pokemon, that does not mean that it is the greatest region. When you really look at these areas, there's not much substance to them at all. Viridian Forest has nothing. But you may say, well, it's a starting forest, it's not supposed to challenge you or have very much, which is fine, I'll give you that point. But after that, Mount Moon only has the fossils, Rock Tunnel's only purpose is to encourage you to get a worthless TM in Flash, and Seafoam Islands is literally optional. Future games have such expansive and impressive looking caves and forests. Yes, Generation 1 was limited with its hardware, but it still could have given us much more. Along with this, Kanto contains some of the lamest roadblocks in all of Pokemon. Yes, the Snorlax is cool because it's the only way to catch one, but the cut tree in front of Lieutenant Surge's gym? The officers that you need to get a drink to just get into Saffron City? Those are such small and tedious tasks that don't really make any sense. Why can't I just walk around the tree? Or why does a thirsty officer stop me from entering the city? Really think about that. Kanto has some gray areas, but when you look at it without nostalgia goggles, you can easily see its various flaws. Looking back at the Kanto region, it is easily the most iconic and memorable region in all of Pokemon. But the region has many pointless and simple areas that pale in comparison to future generations. For these reasons, Generation 1 receives a B for its region. On to the next one. The story of Generation 1 is a simple one. Professor Oak tasks you with catching all 151 Pokemon in the region to fill out the Pokedex. You accept this task and decide to take on the Pokemon gyms along your journey. It is the most basic of any story, but it set the groundworks for all future generations following it. The cast of characters follows a similar trend to the region as a whole. They are obviously the most iconic and memorable characters of any Pokemon game. Professor Oak is the most famous of any professor, and almost everyone can name the 8 gym leaders if you ask them. Plus, Blue or Gary, or whatever you want to call him, is easily many people's favorite rival. He is always one step ahead of you and does not treat you with much respect, nor is he even nice to you. Now Game Freak, if you are listening, this is the type of rival we want. Nobody wants these friendly and weak rivals that we have in the newer games. Please bring this back. Defeating the Elite Four, thinking you were finally the Pokemon League champion, and quickly finding out that your rival beat you there, and now you had to battle him one more time for title of the Pokemon League champion? That was one of the best twists in Pokemon history. The evil team for Kanto was obviously Team Rocket, who everyone knows from the games and especially the anime. Giovanni is many people's favorite evil boss, and it's easy to see why. He is the first boss, and when you find out he's the 8th gym leader, it's almost as great of a twist as finding out your rival was champion. Taking down Team Rocket in their hideout, then the Pokemon Tower, and finally the Sylph Company, that's something I will never forget playing through, and neither will many others. The one drawback that many people are quick to mention is that every other generation has its game based around the legendary Pokemon, and in Generation 1, every legendary is optional, and Mew isn't even obtainable without hacking or glitching. Also, many characters really don't have any importance. With the exception of Giovanni, no gym leader has any reason to be in the game besides a simple battle. Yes, this is a drawback that for pretty much every generation, so I'm not solely saying this is a Gen 1 problem. But wouldn't it have been cooler if, say, just a few of the gym leaders, like Brock, Koga, and Blaine, helped you out to take down Team Rocket? That would have made the story much more compelling and gave you more purpose for the gym leaders. Now I know a lot of people love the story of Team Rocket being essentially the Mafia and taking over multiple areas that you have to take back. But when you compare their aspirations to future evil teams such as Team Galactic or Team Plasma, it is not even close to as creative or even as intimidating as to what Cyrus or Ghetsis are planning. Now, like I said earlier, I am not hating on Generation 1, I am simply pointing out flaws in what many people believe to be a perfect game, which it is not. No game is perfect. The story of Generation 1 is easily the most famous in all of Pokemon, even if it does have some drawbacks. The characters are very memorable, but they do not have the depth that some future games have. For these reasons, Generation 1 receives a B for its story. Let's move on. Being released on the Game Boy, Generation 1 does not have the advantage of superior hardware that newer games have in terms of producing music. However, that did not stop Gen 1 from having some of the most iconic and even greatest themes in all of Pokemon. When you first think of Pokemon music, what is the first theme you think of? For many people, it would obviously be the original Pokemon theme or the title theme for Red and Blue. If it's not that, there is still a very good chance that the first theme you think of appears somewhere in the Generation 1 games. The route and city themes are some of the most memorable of any game. Pallet Town, Vermilion City, Celadon City, and of course Lavender Town are the first that come to mind for me personally. And of course, Viridian Forest, Mount Moon, and Victory Road are all themes that nobody can possibly forget. These all set the standard for years to come and are the reason that music has gotten where it has today in Pokemon games. The trainer battle music and wild battle music in Generation 1 is phenomenal as well. I probably sound like a broken record at this point, but it is the most iconic set of battle music that has ever been released for a Pokemon game. The Gym Leader theme really sets a tone for an intense battle that you know will challenge your skills on your quest to become the very best, like no one ever was. Plus, the final rival battle theme is my personal favorite piece of music from any Pokemon game. The long monologue your rival has, followed by the build-up at the beginning, really sets a tone that you know shit is about to go down. It hypes you up for one final battle to really see who the greatest trainer in the world is. My personal favorite variation is the Fire Red and Leaf Green version because, obviously, the Game Boy couldn't convey the true intensity of the theme, but it is still phenomenal. Although the Game Boy didn't have the most impressive soundboard or hardware in general, Game Freak created some of the most iconic and greatest themes ever. However, that does not change the fact that these themes simply are not as impressive as newer themes because of the hardware deficiency. I still love these themes as many of you probably do, but I cannot overlook the fact that the music just isn't as impressive as later generations. For this reason, Generation 1 receives a B for its music. Now let's move on to the final topic. Generation 1 is the basis that all future games are based on. Therefore, it does not have very many mechanics that are exclusive to these games, but it obviously brought a lot to the table because everything was built up from this game. Battling with 15 different types with all the different type effectiveness was very creative for these games. Creating the bike for faster travel was also a great idea. These ideas were clearly carried over to future games and improved upon, but it was all built up from Pokemon Red and Blue. Of the few mechanics that are exclusive to Generation 1, the sad truth is that the majority of them are glitches or failed programming in these games. For example, Focus Energy is supposed to raise your critical hit ratio, but it does the exact opposite in these games. Critical hits were also based on your base speed. This means Pokemon such as Persian and Tauros had a ridiculous chance of having a critical hit, especially if they used a move like Slash, which had a higher critical hit ratio. Also exclusive for Generation 1 is the fact that Bug and Poison type are both super effective against each other, which was quickly changed in the subsequent games. One of the most notorious aspects of Generation 1 is the fact that every single move, even if it has a 100% accuracy, has a 1 in 256 chance of missing. This means that sometimes you will just randomly miss your attacks, which obviously can completely screw you over if you are fighting a powerful opponent and you just miss your attack and they KO you. It has infuriated me for years that this was part of the game, but luckily they fixed it immediately in Generation 2. As I mentioned earlier, many exclusive mechanics of Generation 1 are just bugs or completely overpowered. One of these overpowered mechanics is the move Wrap. If you don't know how Wrap works in these games, if you use Wrap on an opponent, the attack will continue turn after turn until it finally releases the foe. During these turns, the foe cannot attack or move at all, and basically completely takes advantage of them. Another overpowered aspect is the status condition of freezing. If a Pokemon is frozen, it is impossible to thaw out unless you use an item to heal it, or a Pokemon is hit by a fire-type attack. This can lead to you having no chance to win a battle if you have no healing item or you just never get hit by a fire-type attack. Along with this, sleeping took an entire turn to wake up from. And yes, you could not attack the turn you woke up either, which made it even more broken than it already was. The final overpowered mechanic that I will mention today is the fact that there was only one special stat. In the newer games, every Pokemon has a special attack and a special defense stat, but in Generation 1 there was only one stat that functioned as both special attack and special defense. This means if you used a move like Amnesia, which raises your special stat, it would essentially make your Pokemon superpowered, as its special defense would raise as well as its special attack. One of the most notorious overpowered Pokemon because of this special stat is Alakazam. It had a sky-high special stat with insane speed, which made it basically as powerful as a legendary Pokemon, but not as powerful as Mewtwo because yes, It was even more broken because of this as well. Generation 1 was the basis for all games, but its small collection of exclusive mechanics, many of which are just bugs or glitches, makes its grade for this section of the video take a large drop from its previous rankings. It does not have the creativity nor the ingenuity of later generations, which makes it receive this low grade. Generation 1 receives a C- for its game mechanics. Looking back at the whole of Generation 1 really is a trip down memory lane. The whole game is one big nostalgia trip for many Pokemon fans and has some of the most memorable characters, location, and Pokemon. We have critically analyzed all 5 categories for this generation, and it has received an A- for Pokemon, a B for the region, a B for the story, B for the music, and sadly a C- for the game mechanics. So how good was Generation 1 actually? It was a solid generation, but it does not have the depth or ingenuity of the following generations. It may have been the first generation, which may excuse the game from having creativity, as it was their first go at creating a Pokemon game. But that does not change the fact that some of the following games were simply more creative and had better aspects to their games. Plus, some of the game was just a completely broken mess, but man was it a fun broken mess. Hopefully, you can all see where I am coming from, and respect my analysis of these games. If you have your own opinions or analyses, I would love to hear them in the comments section down below. If you enjoyed this video, please leave a like and consider subscribing if you are new here. I'll be making one of these videos for each generation, so that is something to look forward to in the near future. So please, share this video with anybody you think may enjoy it, and that's it for this video. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see all of you guys next time. Bye-bye.